So the next thing we want to talk about is the yarn. And we had this yarn specially dyed, just like we always do. But this one was done by Melissa from Rising Tide Fiber Co. And she created a behind the scenes video that we're going to show before we actually talk to her. And it's all about her kind of setup for dyeing, which I thought was fascinating. So Sarah's going to play that for you.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm the dyer behind Rising Tide Fiber Co. And I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of what my dye situation is. I used to dye in my home, but my business grew and I just started taking over the whole house and we just can't have that. So I recently transitioned out to the garage. It's still a work in progress because I share that space with my husband, but we're gonna head out the front door and I'm gonna show you my little setup. So I have a fairly large driveway. I have quite a bit of space to kind of spread out if necessary. I tend to lean my drying pans up in the sun to dry out here in this space. I have a really large driveway that I can set up tables and really spread out and get my dyeing process done. But really, I have about half of the garage space. Again, it's still a work in progress. My husband's tools and all kinds of equipment is in here, but I make do with what space I have. So you'll see I have lots of carts with various types of dyes and supplies in it. I have lots of like Rubbermaid tubs. That's the yarn, the bare yarn I'm working through. If I have any extra, most of the time it's in a climate controlled storage unit along with all the other already dyed yarn, because again, I just can't have it taking over my house like it was. I just got a new shipment of yarn to do a wholesale order for my local yarn shop, so I have that to work on. I do have a big oven. It's cooling down. I have Advent yarn in there right now, so I can't really show you. But once it's finished, I'll set up this handy dandy little spin dryer. Essentially, it spins all the excess water out of my dyed yarn after I rinse it. And then what I do is then I actually take it out into the backyard and set it up on drying racks on the patio. The puppies are coming to say hi. But you can see I have some yarn that I was working on this morning in between on my lunch break after I taught my morning classes. And as long as weather's nice, I'll have yarn drying out here. Obviously during the winter, that's not really feasible and we're losing light. So if any of this is not completely dry, then I'll actually move it on inside. I can actually carry this or roll it down into the lower level of my home. Oh, the dogs want in too. And so we just, set it up in here. I usually just set it up in the middle of the floor. I do have a fireplace in the wintertime to kind of help expedite the drying process. And then I bring it into the dining room. I have a winder already set up on a bookcase in my dining room where I can wind yarn. Some of this has already been wound. Some of it needs to be wound. You can see there's a pile there as well. And then once it's finished, I go ahead and I move into my office or spread out here in the dining room and get everything labeled, get photographed, and get it up on the website. So I hope you've enjoyed this brief little tour of my setup, and I look forward to seeing you guys this weekend.
Fabulous. Oh, so good. Okay, so now we need She is? I was like, no, we need Melissa. Hello,
I'm
and
here.
she appears. She appears. Fabulous. Yeah, that was really fun. Thank you for doing that video for us. It's always fun to
Welcome.
see kind of the behind the scenes. And I think it's great for everybody to realize all the different steps that it takes to dye yarn and how everybody just kind of makes it work.
Yeah, it's not always glamorous.
There's a lot involved, and it's fascinating how how everybody makes it work in different ways. So it's really fun. Thank you for that.
Well,
So welcome. Love the
thank you.
yarn. Love what you did. I was so excited when I first opened that box. So I'm hoping that everybody else on the tour was as delighted as I was. You just captured the colors beautifully. And so let's start from the beginning. So how did you get into dyeing yarn?
I started dyeing because I had a local yarn shop. I was a new knitter and had learned to knit. And as that new yarn shop kind of expanded, they started carrying more and more of their own milled yarn and dyed, and I could never find the colors that I wanted. So I went on a dyeing retreat and I learned how to dye and I kind of played with it and dyed for myself. And then a few years later, after we bought our home, I played some more and I had friends that went, "Oh my God, you could sell this." And that's how it started.
Fabulous. But you don't do this full time, right?
No, I have a full-time job. I am a high school math teacher.
Fabulous. Does the math come into the dyeing? Do you see it
I
being
mean,
helpful?
yeah, of course there's math. I think it's more chemistry than anything else. My parents took the same, they didn't go on the retreat, but they took the same dyeing class I did a couple years ago. And my dad has a chemistry degree. He was a chemistry teacher. And so he's thoroughly fascinated with the process because it makes a ton of sense to him.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Yeah,
So there's
because I
probably more
see
science to it than there is math, but
math.
math and science kind of play nicely together.
They do. They do. Ah, cool. So how do you get I mean, we, gave you a jellyfish, but on on other yarns that you're dyeing, what is your favorite way to get inspiration?
So I'm not the traditional dyer who gets a lot of inspiration from photographs. I don't think I translate well from photographs. Um, it's a harder process for me. I tend to gain inspiration from song lyrics or things that I'm reading. I'm a pretty voracious reader. So, I've done summer book clubs where I've not dyed something to match the cover, but to match a theme or, a really key item or object in a novel, that sort of thing. But primarily it's probably song lyrics.
Interesting. Do you have an example?
Yeah, so for many years I did a sock club that I did themes. Like one year I did 70s, I did women in country during the 90s, Broadway musicals, but you essentially pick a song like I have a lot of Taylor Swift's colorways where you pick a song, and I understand that there's a lot of um legal aspects to taking the name of a song and naming it to colorways, and I don't really want to cease and desist letter. So I will usually pick a phrase out of a song. Like my staple red colorway comes from her song Style, but it's called classic red lip thing because it's a phrase that she talks about her red lipstick. So I just use phrases that stand out in song lyrics.
Oh, cool. Oh, fun. All right. What do you like to make with your yarn?
I am primarily a garment knitter, so I do socks and sweaters almost exclusively.
Cool. Do you have a favorite designer?
Um, I am a big Andrea Mowry fan. Um, but I tend to um try to stick with her more standard patterns, not the ones that have a lot of color work or could go out of style. I prefer ones that are um, just a more minimalistic or classic look.
Yeah, I think that it is interesting that the designs, how do I say this? She has a lot of designs, and for a while there, and I'm not sure if this is still true, but for a while she was going back and forth between um something very colorful, with a lot of
Hmm.
colors in it, and then something neutral and more
Right,
classic, and going back and forth. And I don't know that she's known as much for the classic ones, but I think she does have a
right,
good library of them. So yeah, so everybody on, all the groupies, if you're looking for a
right.
good classic sweater, that is a good way to
Yeah.
go. Do you have any favorite samples that you can show us?
Um,
Do you have anything within reach?
yeah, my most favorite top that I did this summer, oh, what is this called? Oh, was the Vibes tee, and it's by Tiff Nealon. Um, and I test knit this for her. It's actually a sport weight pattern. I got gauge with my 50/50 cotton wool blend. It was five color, one, two, three, four. Yeah, four colors. You could opt to do it in two colors. I think if you're not a stripes person, you could do it in one color. Um, but I believe in wearing wool during the summertime because it does have that moisture wicking capability, especially when you pair it with a plant fiber that brings the coolness as well. So this was a pretty big favorite of mine this summer. Um, I do have a cardigan. I dyed it with yarn that didn't come out the way it was supposed to color wise. It's caught in my chair. And it's actually the Ginny cardigan by Andrea Mowry. And I used a my Peruvian non-superwash. This is a DK weight blend. Um, and the reason I love this wool, I know some people find it rather on the rustic side and don't necessarily want to wear Peruvian wool, up against skin. But I think it's brilliant for things like cardigans because I made this pattern when it came out and I've never had to depill it. Which is
That is the
kind of one of
advantage.
the beauties of a non-superwash wool that is leaning towards that rustic feel.
Yes.
Um, and I just finished a Thea Coleman in the same wool, but this is another cardigan I just finished. It's her Mastija cardigan. It actually buttons in the front. I opted not to button it because I don't like buttons on my cardigans, but it has a really nice, simple pattern. But again, I chose that rustic, non-superwash wool because I have dogs and I want to go outside and come back inside, and I don't want to have to worry about things pilling or being super sensitive to snags and such, like
Yeah.
superwash can tend to be.
Very cool. Well, and it's interesting because one of the questions that was submitted by one of the groupies was, what is your favorite type of wool to dye? So if the more rustic is your favorite to
To
wear,
wear.
what would be your favorite to dye?
Um, I mean, superwash yarn takes color brilliantly. I mean, it's the most vivid, it's the most fun. Um, it's what the majority of knitters that I run into want. Um, And I don't know if that's just because they're afraid of non-superwash wool or they're not been exposed to any that they like, but superwash is probably the easiest to dye because it takes color so brilliantly. When I look at my organic merino wools, they come out beautifully, but they're more muted in tone, even if they're the same saturation level as like a superwash. Um, and things are not crisp. Like speckles are not crisp on a non-superwash yarn made of the same wool as a superwash. So superwash is a lot of fun to dye, and I dye a lot of it.
So with the yarn that you did for us, because it's a tweedy, did that impact how you dyed it, or did it impact the way you put the your color choice, I guess, when you designed that color? Did the fact that it was tweedy impact what you were doing?
A little bit, because you worry about sometimes certain colors hiding the tweed look. Um, so the more bluer toned colorway, I worried that the tweed wouldn't be as prominent. So I needed to be really careful about how dark do I go with this for it to still have that tweed appeal. I'm a huge fan of tweed. Um, with the other colorway, I didn't have any fear with
Right.
the tweed blending in that one.
Yeah, and it was interesting to me because it almost felt like the tweedy pieces were like the bits that float in the ocean, that's the piece of leaf or the little stick
Right.
or the, whatever. And so it just, to me, added to the whole atmosphere of the of the yarn. I thought it was
flotsam and jetsam. Sorry.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Let's see. I'm going through my questions to make sure we covered everything. Oh, I forgot to ask about, have you had any of your colorways that started as accidents and turned into?
I had any start as accidents. I mean, I feel like even happy accidents as a dyer, that colorway may not appeal to me, and it may not have landed the way that I needed it or wanted it for whatever I'm trying to dye. But that doesn't mean it can't be another color, because somebody's gonna love that color. If it's not in my wheelhouse, it's usually in someone else's. So I can't say that I've had any though that stay as a lasting colorway. No.
All right, then. Any questions from the chat, from the groupies?
I think I saw someone ask what is a nep, because that's on the label. And so the Donegal nep is really just different colors of nylon that gets woven and spun into the wool that creates the colored nep that and because it's nylon, it resists the dye. That's how they do that.
Perfect. Thank
That's
you.
a much better description than mine, which is Tweety bits.
Yeah.
Thank you for the accurate one.
Well, and it's interesting too, because if they're, it is important. You don't want those pieces, those parts to die, or they wouldn't show up. So they do have to be a different.
Right, which is why I suspect when you look at, I think, Lobby Enemy or Hedgehog, where they are taking people's scrap leftovers that we're all shipping them to make colorful tweedy yarns, I'm pretty sure they're dyeing that wool before it's spun and milled with those leftover neps, which is a different process.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because
otherwise
we're sending them leftovers and it would absorb. The only way to not absorb dye is for it to be spun in after
right.
the wool has been dyed.
Interesting. Fascinating, fascinating. Okay, so that's the end of my questions. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us that I didn't ask you?
I the only thing I can think of is, I talked about in the video, I've temporarily moved to my garage because my business grew so big that it literally took over everything. Like my dyed yarn and most of my bare yarn and anything for festivals, that's all housed in a climate controlled storage unit. So when orders come in every few days, I just go to the unit, pull everything and ship it. But my local yarn shop, um, I have a really great relationship. I'm friends with the owner. I do work there part-time, like 1 day a week and doing classes and stuff. But she recently bought a building and it has space she wants to turn into a studio. So hopefully after the first of the year, a few months into the year, I will be transitioning it out of my garage into a much more glamorous situation than it is now. So that's
Very
pretty
cool.
exciting.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
that's going to be very cool. All right. Anything else?
I don't see any other questions.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, Melissa, for
Of
joining
course.
us
Of
and for
course.
dyeing the yarn. Just loved it.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
I appreciate you spending time with us on a Sunday afternoon.
Of course. You're welcome.